Right, this is Marty Wilson. I'm at the Monroe County Historical Association, and I'm sitting here with Mr. Barry Cohen. And we're going to talk about his life as an attorney and his father's experience as an attorney in Monroe County. Sitting here with me are Amy and Tanya, and today is April 19, 2022. So Barry, let's start at the beginning, as it were, with you. Where and when were you born, and can you talk about who were your parents?
I was born here in Monroe County, September 6th, 1952. Okay. And my parents had moved from Philadelphia in late 1950. My father is Maxwell H. Cohen, and my mother is Dolores Cohen, both now deceased.
And what brought them to the Poconos?
My father had met Alex Bensinger,
okay,
who has been a lifelong family friend of us. Alex lived here in Stroudsburg. His father and brother had a law practice. They both went to Temple University School of Law. And so, having graduated in 1949, Buzz, which is his nickname, Buzz came back home to practice, and my father stayed in Philadelphia. Buzz had introduced my father to Stroudsburg and Monroe County during those times. Because of some illnesses that he had early in his life, it was recommended that he move to a smaller community to practice law, which would probably provide less stress, a more colloquial lifestyle, which he took seriously, and then targeted Monroe County to where he wanted to raise his family.
So they went to school together. They went to law school together, Buzz and your dad?
Yes.
Oh, I see. So how did he find the Poconos? I mean, had he been a lifelong resident of Philly, or was he just going to school there?
No, he was a lifelong resident of Philly. Our family was traditionally in the Broad and Olney area, Washington Lane, which is North Philly up Broad Street. And my family is spread about the Philadelphia area and the Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, Ventnor, Margate.
So this is his first job as an attorney.
Oh, he's green, and he is out of law school. He passed the bar exam, and then actually had a first job in Philadelphia for an attorney. And then he proceeded to another firm, a bigger firm, but then became ill and then had to redirect his priorities to how he wanted to and where he wanted to live. And so he probably was in Philadelphia about 6 months, and then found a friend who introduced him to Martin Phillip. Martin Phillip was an attorney in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, and a prominent man, a real estate magnate and skilled lawyer. He gave my father a job, because there was a problem. My father wanted to be admitted to the bar of Monroe County, but there was a wall that was created by the Bar Association. And for the first time, my father was faced with roots of anti-Semitism in Monroe County, which forbade him from practicing here because of his religion.
So just to be clear, this Martin, I forget his last name.
Martin Phillip.
Phillip was from Palmerton. That's where his practice was?
Yes, Martin lived and had a practice in Palmerton with his brother, and so their firm was Phillip and Phillip. They hired my father as a junior associate, and while my father had to litigate his admission into the bar of Monroe County because he couldn't or would be forbade from practicing law unless you were admitted to the bar. And so therefore, the roadblock had been set, and he had to eventually litigate that issue before the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in order to change what were racial biases of the day.
So how did that work? I mean, he applies to get accepted to the bar and they just say no, or is there some kind of...
In effect, that's the short story. More procedurally, there is a Board of Law Examiners that existed in the 50s. And that Board of Law Examiners was made up of important, powerful lawyers in the community who would make sure that other new lawyers that were coming in were of the proper character and had the minimum qualifications of education. And so they are empowered to interview, hold hearings, and approve or disapprove. The board comprised about 5 or 6 heavyweights of the day in the Bar Association, who in effect utilized a local rule to isolate my father out.
Your father was the only Jewish lawyer or a guy that attempted to join the bar?
Yes, there were no Jewish lawyers admitted to the bar, and at that time, and he was the first to apply. It was clear by looking at all of the actions of the Board of Law Examiners of Monroe County that offended their sensibilities. And so they created roadblocks to discourage him. My father wasn't a man to be easily discouraged, especially when it was on grounds of residency requirement, which were utilized as a bogus, more acceptable public response to their hidden anti-Semitism. Sad for the day. Sad today. We see these same things today. And in different communities, in different countries, we have yet to rid ourselves of this subject in our world today.
Sadly, that's right, yeah. So when did you, tell the story, how did he eventually got accepted by the bar?
Well, he filed an application, which he did. He followed local rules of procedure. The residency requirement involved good character, which he had already, they couldn't argue that. And, but the rule specifically said, and I quote, an attorney would have to have a minimum of 2 years of study and practice of law to be admitted. My father complied with that minimum requirement. However, they discretionarily decided that his 3 years of law school did not comply with study on the subject.
So Alex Bensinger just did the same thing.
Correct. Exactly. And actually did less because he never worked in Philadelphia.
Huh. All right, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
So since Alex never worked in Philadelphia, he returned home. They probably were past the bar in October of '49. Alex was done school. He probably was here July of 1949 after finishing the bar exam. There's normally a 2-month delay in scoring and publication of results, and therefore he was here and he was practicing. So you see that it was obvious for my father to identify, along with other information that he had received about the community and the homework that he had done, that was really an issue of religion and not of admission, and they were using the residency requirement rule by interpreting it in a way that was prohibitive to exclude, particularly a Jewish lawyer.
You have to help me out here. Was Alex Bensinger's dad still alive at this point?
He was. In fact, Alex's father was there. I thought his name was Charles. And Alex's brother, Charles, a junior, but we called him Chud. That was his nickname. So it was Chud and Buzz. And so, yes, and that was... So there were distinguished gentlemen on the Board of Law Examiners. They decided, I'm sure with the help of the president judge of the time, Judge Davis, that this was not a place for a Jewish litigator. Therefore, they denied his admission. An appeal was available under the rules to the State Board of Law Examiners. They also denied his appeal.
And this would be in Harrisburg?
That would be in Harrisburg or Philadelphia.
Oh.
Philadelphia was a hub back then, probably more than Harrisburg, even though Harrisburg was our state capital.
And they denied it on what grounds?
Same. They supported the position of Monroe County. And so we're talking about a degree of cronyism of the day, foundationed upon religious prejudice, to achieve a goal. That being to not admit Jewish lawyers in this community. So it was, and so my father had retained by that time a prominent Philadelphia lawyer who represented his interest. An appeal from the denial of the State Board of Law Examiners was available directly to the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now that is our highest court in the Commonwealth. And the buck stops there. And so the appeal was heard. The Supreme Court reviewed, the president judge, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, reviewed the rule, determined that its language, even though clear, was being used to segregate and obfuscate the intention of the admission of lawyers in any county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so, as a result, the judge did a couple of things. The Chief Justice did a couple of things. One, he recognized the reason. My father had already been admitted to the Bar of Philadelphia. He had already been admitted to the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. He had already been admitted as a practicing attorney to the Superior Court of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, yet he couldn't get into the bar in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, some small little town in northeast Pennsylvania. So he, I'm sure, educated himself as to the local flavor of the issue, and then determined that it was prejudice, was anti-Semitism, and then went about to change the rule affecting the entire Commonwealth. That rule which was used was changed so that a statement was made in the amended rule that said, you clearly cannot use this to exclude someone from the practice in any county on study or practice for a minimum of 2 years. Well, that was a complete victory at that level. And so the Supreme Court Justice disseminated that ruling, and it got here to Monroe County. At the same time, I've been told that the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, called up Judge Fred Davis, who is the presiding president judge here in Monroe County, and they had a very enlightening discussion. And the gist of that discussion was, you can take care of your business or I can embarrass you horribly throughout the Commonwealth. What would you choose to do?
Where'd you hear this story?
This came down from those who are on the Board of Law Examiners to my father when, after he had practiced here, became a prominent lawyer a well-respected lawyer, and they were friends. I mean, I'm friends with the children of some of these members of the Board of Law Examiners. They're great people. I came back to practice here, and these were my colleagues. So it was although we can't measure the personal feelings of individuals on these subjects, but at least from a public perspective, peace had been achieved, his admission had been accomplished, and then they went about to be adversaries in the legal system for my father for over 40 years.
What year was the Supreme Court decision?
1951, it was changed in May of 1951. After the phone call, after the change in the law, Judge Davis was more than cooperative and called my father on the phone and said, and also with board members, sent a board member to say, listen, you have been accepted, your application is accepted, and we would like to have a ceremony, which was customary of the day, to admit you into the bar in front of Judge and conducted by Judge Davis, which was done in July of 1951. And so in about 8-9 months, this issue of anti-Semitism causing no admission was resolved.
Do you happen to know, you might not, but were there any Jewish lawyers who had applied before your father and just gave up?
No, it's my understanding that he was the first.
Your dad was the first. And
the Jewish community here was very small. And so my father, along with other original immigrants from Jersey and New York, during the first wave in the 40s and early 50s, came just like the second wave in the 80s and 90s.
So your dad was in the vanguard. He was the first one. He was the guy that opened this up.
Yeah, it's amazing. And we've had some stellar Jewish lawyers that have followed. Gentlemen like, what's Brown's first name? Lester Brown came shortly after. Sam Newman, who you may know because he's a contemporary of ours, was next. And then after that, floodgates had opened, although we don't have many Jewish lawyers even today. Some have come and gone and practiced very happily here in the county.
So this is a personal story for you because you also, as it turns out, are a lawyer.
Correct.
And when did you first start hearing about this story? Did your dad talk about this at the dinner table? Was this, or was it later when you became a lawyer? And
it was when I became a lawyer, and I came back, started to work, had passed the bar exam, and the first day up, we sat down and he told me this story. And the message was really one of information. He wasn't at that point upset. He held no malice. Once again, to repeat, the colleagues that may have had ancestors involved are good friends of ours. And we did work closely with them. And so there was not an issue to be seen, heard about this. My father didn't feel that was the right way to deal with it. There was no angst. The legal system is an adversarial system. He would show what he was worth on behalf of his clients in a courtroom. And that was what he told me. He said, don't feel at all restricted by this and don't carry ill will. I said, well, my response was, listen, this was your battle at your time. I have had those battles. I have had personally those battles in different settings, and I told him that this was your battle. I'm sure I will have mine, and I'm fine with it. As long as you're fine with it, I'm fine with it. And we did. We continued to practice law until the early 90s when he retired. I started in 1978.
So you were born again in 52. Did you, not to change the subject, but to expand a little bit, did you experience any anti-Semitism when you were growing up in the Poconos?
Oh, yes.
What was that like?
Well, you know, it was low-level, ignorant-based, name-calling, called a dirty Jew, stupid Jew. Of course, there are a lot of four-letter words
So
involved.
This is in school?
This is in school. It got to a point, I was in homeroom one day, and in front of me was a guy. We were in 7th grade, and he had a habit of wanting to shove my religion down my throat. And so every day or every other day, he would turn around to me, being in the desk in front of me, and say something really nasty. And for me, that just gave me an opportunity to just think about how I wanted to handle it. Amazingly, I was very close friends with the superintendent of schools because he and I played golf together. I played golf since...
You talking about in 7th grade?
I played golf since I was 7. He and I worked at Glenbrook Country Club part-time, summers and nights, and he was a member. And so his name was Samuel Wells. His son was on the golf team with me when we were in high school, and Sam was always the kindest friend. And I used to play with Sam and Mike Wells, and that was the relationship. Well, one day I said to myself, I had had enough of this individual up front. I was going to basically flatten him in that room physically. And I'm not a violent guy. I mean, so as a result, I went to Sam first. So I walked into his superintendent's office. I'm in 7th grade now. And I asked the secretary. He says, oh, come on back, Barry. And I said, hey, Sam, how you doing? And
you called him Sam.
Oh, yeah. I'm on first name basis with this man. And I explained to him the problem. And I said to him, I'm going to physically flatten this guy in the next couple of days. I want you to know because it's going to look like I'm the aggressor. And when we're both sent to the principal's office, they're going to, the victim here is going to scream that I hit him for no apparent reason. And I need you, if you will, to back me because someone's got to talk to the principal at that moment. Because I'm going to tell him to call you in that meeting if you give me permission. Oh, he said, absolutely. You tell the principal to call me before he takes any action in this situation, and I will make it right. And that's exactly what happened. He called Sam. Sam came out.
Well, let's back up. You flattened the guy. Let's hear the story.
Oh, I'm sorry. So he turned around. I had had enough. I got out of my seat. I took him by the throat, and I lifted him up out of his seat. We didn't weigh much at that point, and I was a little upset. Lifted him out of the seat, and I dropped him with a right hook into the abdomen, and I just flattened him right out. He fell to the floor. We were sent to the principal. And the rest of the story, wow, you've heard. And they sent me back, and the individual was expelled for 3 days.
He was expelled?
He was expelled because he had been...
But not you?
Not me, no. They allowed my response to be justified.
Where's the homeroom teacher during all this?
Taking nitroglycerin and trying to gain control of what he thought was out of control. He just saw a fight. He didn't know that I wasn't going to take it more than one. It wouldn't be necessary, and it wasn't. And so, as a result, he was a senior. He was our age. He was younger than us. But he was a gray fox, and he was upset, as he should be. And he sent us back right down to the principal's office.
And one thing that strikes me about this story is your friend Sam didn't try to avert this violent act. I mean, you told him, I'm going to punch this guy out, and he doesn't maybe try to talk to the kid
I don't know what Sam did, but I would doubt that he would talk to the kid you know, anti-Semitism of this day wasn't going to be resolved by a talking to. I mean, it was deep-seated. It's culturally based, and he let it play out, for better or for worse.
Was that the worst example that you personally experienced here in the Poconos?
Oh no, not at all.
Do you want to talk about that stuff or not?
You know, I think we've exhausted the history of this subject.
All right.
But no, it's sad.
But things have changed.
Yes, I think they've changed for the better. Absolutely. You still have pockets of individuals who are prejudiced in all societies. We have them here. Look at today's prejudice by those against the Muslim community as an example of our today's hot button issue on prejudice. I'm not so sure that any of it's justified, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Look at our prejudice against the Asian community as an example, which has been well publicized.
Yeah.
So, have we come anywhere in Monroe County? Yes, I think we've come a long way in the right direction. Have we come a long way in society in general? Not in the last 4 years, not in the last 8 years of our political, geopolitical conflicts.
You mentioned the Jewish community in reference to, you know, when your dad was going through this, it was a small community. Can you talk about the Jewish community? And was your dad part of it, or? Oh,
very much so. He was like most on the boards that the community had, the temple had, and it was located where on the street over the Interborough Bridge, which is
Lincoln.
Yes, around Lincoln, and it was literally that street is now 5 or 6 lanes going up towards the college, with the giant market on the right, Walmart down below.
Mm-hmm.
That was a 2-lane highway back in the 50s, and in the area that is now part of the roadway was the Jewish temple. And when the state or county condemned that area to build the commercial improvements that you see there, the temple relocated and is now located on Wallace Street in Stroudsburg.
So that's when they built the one up on Wallace.
Correct. My father and his friends were integral parts of raising money and going through that project. It was a great accomplishment for the Jewish community of 100 families.
So it's grown, the community has grown over the years.
Yes.
Well, these are fascinating stories. It's something that I wouldn't have experienced at all. Obviously, because I'm not Jewish, but I mean, I've never felt this kind of animosity just because of my race or my religion.
No, it's, well, lucky for you.
Yeah, lucky for me.
Lucky for you and others who weren't victims of this kind of hatred.
Well, do you have any questions?
Can you ask, the Jewish cemetery is up in Middle Smithfield Township.
Correct.
So it's not, why is it all the way up there?
Unavailability of land. The founders of this Jewish community had purchased property there. I don't know the history. I don't know the why, but that's what they did.
It just seems so removed from where the temple.
I agree completely. However, now, because it is so removed, the temple was able to secure a portion of the cemetery off of Bryant Street, Laurel Cemetery. And so there is a Jewish section that currently exists in Laurel Cemetery, which is mostly Christian, that is earmarked for burial for the Jewish community.
Well, I think we've covered the subject. Are there any other questions we should have asked you about this topic?
No, I think that it's
fascinating. I mean, who would think that this was happening here in the Poconos? What about, one other question occurs to me. Were there many blacks in any of your classes in school?
Yes, in fact, I was the only Jew in my graduating class of Strasbourg, 1970. We had two African-American students, good friends, and literally, I don't remember any Hispanic.
And do you remember them experiencing discrimination?
You know, I don't. I never asked. I had my own issues to deal with, and so no, I didn't go there. I didn't feel that way. I really, in my core, in my heart, I'm not a prejudiced individual, so therefore I don't look for it. I'm also an optimist, so I look for the good things in life and in people. I can deal with the bad, but I'm always looking for the good. And so I'm walking around with a smile on my face mostly, and life is good. And the practice of law in Monroe County after this has been great. I raised my family here. My wife was a teacher for Strasbourg Area School District and Pocono Mountain at different times, elementary. And this has been a great place to grow up. Played Little League Baseball in the late 50s and 60s when Strasbourg Little League was just formed. No, this was the playground and the lifestyle that I thought was unbelievable.
Are your kids going into law, or is it too early? Or?
No, I have one daughter, 39, and she is a college counselor outside of Cleveland, Ohio. I did not encourage her. I did not encourage her because I didn't think that she wasn't interested. She showed no interest, so I didn't put any pressure on her at all. I think I figured she wanted to be a dentist when I saw her at Halloween dressed up in a lamp shade and with a Crest bottle costume and a grandfather prepared toothbrush that was that tall. And so, but she ended up not doing that either. So I've got two grandchildren, and they're doing great.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's again, I'm so grateful. I feel, in spite of all these things, I feel blessed. I have no complaints at all.
When did your dad die? Do you remember the year?
Yeah, he died in about 12 years ago, and sad. He was quite the guy.
Well, it sounds like
he was quite the guy. I learned a great deal from him.
Well, I have no further questions. I think you tell a fascinating story, so I'm ready to turn this off unless you have something else that you would like to add.
No, I'm happy. I thank you.
Well,
thank you very much for giving me and the viewer an opportunity to hear about a subject that most people do not know about.
Right.
And as it always is, it's a lesson in how we can be friendlier, nicer, more accepting citizens of our community, of all communities, and that none of us really want anything different than to be happy and to be treated with respect. And so if we can all work towards that goal, I think our world will be a lot happier.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks again, Barry.
Thank you.